Welcome to Hairblazers, the podcast where we empower you to disrupt the beauty industry starting with your chair and your salon. You can focus on running your business and tune in here to find out how to keep it moving forward. I'm Colleen Lamarand, the Director of Education and Business Development for the Verde Salon Group here in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
And I'm Naomi Breen. I'm the Marketing Manager for the Verde Salon Group and the Evade Institute Winnipeg.
And I'm Roberto Sonopoli, owner of Verde Salon and the Evade Institute Winnipeg.
Today, we're going to be discussing why location matters and how you can make the most of the location you're in.
So every salon, whether you're opening your first location or you're looking at your second, third, fourth, fifth, and onward, where in your city or your town you're located is going to definitely be a factor in your success. So Rob, you've opened a few salons. What were some of the first factors that you looked at when you were selecting a location?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, you have to love the location that you're looking at. If you're going to be spending time there, opening a business, investing, taking a look at the community that you're going into and make sure that it coincides with where you want to be. My journey for opening a location, it was interesting. What I would do, I would personally just drive around the city, look at available spaces, and literally park my car in those spaces for hours at a time, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, late at night, and just see what they would feel like, how many people were walking around, what was the energy in the community. And that gave me a really good idea of what it would feel like to have our location there. I'd envision what it would look like. So that was a great exercise to do, but you really need to be looking at three key components, three key areas or locations that you could have. A location, B location, C location. I'm not going to get into the details of all of them, but your A location would be like high traffic, like you're in a mall, thousands of people walking by your storefront every day. Typically, those lease rates are going to be a lot higher, but you do have the traffic to work with. Your B location, more along the lines of a strip mall, where you still have traffic coming in, usually have great parking. And your C location, a little bit more secluded. Maybe you're the only tenant within the occupied space. So you're going to have to really do a lot of work to drive guests into your space. Our locations are B locations for the salon group, and they've worked really well. So, when we're looking at opening our first location in the community of Bridgewater, one thing that we had to note was it was still a developing community, and there was a lot of vacant houses, a lot of vacant land still. So it was going to take some time to develop, but we were able to then take a look at that, leverage that, and then work it into our lease rate. So we got a more favorable lease rate for the first 5 years of our term.
So I'm guessing also you're not necessarily just looking at the immediate success when you open a location. It's also like what the future opportunities would be as well.
Most definitely. And these are all things to consider when looking at the term, how long you want to lease a space for ourselves. With the amount that we had to invest into the space, it would only make sense on a 10-year lease. So we knew that first 5 years was going to be a bit of a stretch or a bit of a struggle to get through. But we knew that in the second 5 years, it would pay off. So that was our consideration. So both our salon locations are in B locations, great anchors, grocery stores. You got your Starbucks in place, which always helps. Draws a lot of people in. Our third location, our school location, is located in the Exchange District downtown. A lot less traffic, but a lot more favorable lease rates, which makes a space when you're leasing, 2,000 square feet in the salon compared to 10,000 square feet in the school. You need to find some favorable lease rates to make it a viable business. So that was kind of our logic around choosing our spaces. Again, first location, spent a lot of time in the community. Second location was up and coming quite quickly, and knew that it was going to be a great area, a great location. So I think we prematurely moved into that space. It was a calculated step for sure, but it's worked out. Our second location now has caught up to our first location in a matter of 2 years rather than 5 years, and that area is still growing.
So maybe talk a little bit about the distance between the two Verde locations and kind of what played into choosing them.
Yeah, so the location itself played into really where we were choosing to go at that time, but we needed to look at the distance between the two, and I think we're roughly about 6 kilometers, 7 kilometers, which when opening a second location matters. Opening that second location requires resources that you're going to have to pull from your first location, and having the locations close to one another makes that a lot. I won't say it's easier because it definitely comes with its own challenges for sure. But it makes it a lot more manageable for the employees or for the team members as well. So I don't think that you can get too close. I think less than 6 kilometers, maybe less than 5 kilometers becomes a bit of a challenge where you start poaching your guests from one location to the other. But where we're at right now, we're kind of sitting in between two really big communities, so we are able to service both. I've listened to a lot of podcasts and people that open salons further apart, and I've heard the challenges that they have. When you're having to move your leadership team and management team to manage both locations, it can become very trying on them, which then in turn, the satisfaction they're getting in their job becomes a lot more complicated than if the locations are closer together.
So another thing that's definitely a question when you're moving at or opening a new location is whether you're going to move into like a new space, a new development, or if you're going to move into something that's already existing, and then you're looking at, maybe tearing down what's there and then also renovating to, make it branded to you.
Yeah, my personal preference for sure is new space, right? I think both locations when we picked them up were just shells. So we just had the 4 walls surrounding us and everything needed to be added. There's a bit of a higher cost associated with starting new. HVAC, electrical, everything needs to be, run throughout the building. So there's definitely a higher cost point. But you're able to really renovate it the way that you want it to be. You're not dealing with other challenges that exist within the space. Our school location was an existing space, and that was definitely challenging. For starters, it was in a historic building. So the building itself was very old. The equipment was very old. So you're having to update a lot of that, but moving it around, you're kind of set by parameters, where everything has been set up. Washrooms are in place, so you have to work around those. So there's a lot of upside to leasing a new space and building it out. The upside on renovating a space that's existing is typically you can get better lease rates. Typically landlords will be a little bit more persuaded to help you out with your leasehold improvements because they want to get a tenant in the space. So there's advantages to both, disadvantages to both for sure. I think it's just going to be what's right for you and what's right for your business. Personally, myself, I wouldn't focus on whether the space is new or an existing space. I focus on where it's at and does that make sense for our business? And if that makes sense, can we make it work for our business?
Absolutely. And I think the salon for sure has benefited from being in like a brand new space because we've been able to customize it and brand it in a really, really strong way. I think one thing that you really need to consider if you're moving into an existing space, and obviously depending on the city you're in, there may be way more existing spaces than there are new spaces available. But if you're moving into something that's existing, you need to make sure that you're doing that renovation really well so your space is aligned to your brand and makes sense for your brand and the way you want people to feel when they're in your space. If you do kind of a renovation halfway, you might retain some of those pieces from the previous business that was there. It's like if you don't want your salon to smell like the restaurant that was there before you moved in, it's like those are things that you do have to consider when you're looking into renovation. It's like, how can I make this space very clearly my own and very clearly branded to my business?
Yeah, there's no doubt your space needs to be a reflection of your brand. If they don't match, then it's very hard for your guests to understand what you're trying to actually convey to them. So again, looking at the spaces, when we're looking also at existing spaces, a lot of those are in developed communities. They have great character, have the potential to have great character, and you can play off of that. If you can work that into your brand, there can be a great advantage as well. Coming into a new space, like the space that we're in right now, it was very sterile. When we moved in here, there wasn't a lot of businesses around here. The area itself wasn't fully developed, so it felt a lot more sterile. But if you're able to then really make it a reflection of who your brand is, then you're able to convey that message to your guests well when they walk through the door.
So why don't we also talk about brand as far as the space inside the space itself? So we talked about location. What about kind of where everything is placed within the salon and how that can make an impact?
Well, I think you can speak to it from a stylist point of view. One, it needs to be very functional. Doesn't matter how great you make it look. If it's not functional for the team members inside, it's just a really hard day to get through. So it has to be functional. We definitely made retail a priority in our space. I think we have roughly about 600 square feet of our space out of 2,000 dedicated to our retail space. We call it our experience center. And this is an area where our guests walk into. They feel very welcomed when we're walking to the space. It's bright, it's open, and it has all of our product on display where guests can interact with it. They can pick it up, they can try it out. Feels like an area where that it just makes sense in. You want to make sure that your retail is at the front of the store, not behind the desk, so that guests can actually interact with it. But it's just a great place for our stylists to interact and greet their guests as well too.
I was gonna say, I think there's been a lot of talk more recently about, is having retail in the salon something that is good for the business? And I mean, I try to look at it from every different way, and I still think that having retail available for purchase in your business is very important and also very lucrative for your business.
Yeah, we can get into a whole nother conversation here for sure. But look, whether your guests are buying retail from you or whether they're going to be buying it from Amazon or Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever drugstore, they're buying it.
They're buying it.
Billions of dollars worth every year. Right. So there's no reason why you don't deserve to have a piece of that. You're interacting with us, you're building a relationship with them, you're educating them on the products that will greatly benefit them. Why not have the opportunity for them to purchase them from you? Our retail business is over 20% of our total sales, and it helps tremendously, especially for a starting business. If you're a startup business, our retail is what really carried us through that first 18
Absolutely.
months. It really helps pay the rent. It helps in all the expenses. And it really gives a stylist an opportunity to complete their service. I think that you're really shortening the experience for the guests if you're creating an amazing style for them, but then not giving them the opportunity to recreate that at home with products that you believe in. Because one way or the other, they're going to buy products. They may work, they may not work for them, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be buying them from you.
And I think having the retail space where it is, at the front and having this experience center here, it's in a great place when the guests are finished their service, their stylists walk them right through the experience center. So again, like you said, having it out and available for people to experience is really important.
Or, if they're waiting for their stylist, being able to try things, being able to smell things, being able to actually have that tactile experience makes a huge difference. I'm just baffled that there's an argument that you shouldn't have retail in your salon.
Yeah, there's a big one.
There's definitely a conversation around it, and I can understand where that comes from, and I truly believe stylists do not want to be salespeople.
Yeah.
They didn't get into the industry to become a salesperson.
Absolutely.
But if we can remove that connotation that you have to sell your guests to retail and just simply educate them on the retail, by simply educating them, that does the job. Guests can make their own decision. They're very capable of knowing what's right for them, what's wrong for them, whether it's in their price point where they can afford it, and you don't need to sell it. They can make that decision. So we try to remove that from our day-to-day where our stylists don't feel like they have to sell. But we really do believe in educating our guests on the products that we're using and why we love them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, if somebody is coming into a salon and having a service and having an experience, when they're leaving, the majority of them do buy a new product, especially if you're going through a change, you're coloring your hair for the first time, you're changing your cut or style significantly. People are looking to purchase products, and definitely changing the focus from selling to educating makes a huge difference. But just to bring it back to where everything is located within your space, Colleen, I know one thing that you've mentioned previously is on the stylist side, where are your sinks located? Where is that service happening? Is it happening in a super crazy high traffic spot? Is it right in the middle of your salon, or is it kind of to the side, maybe in an area that's a little bit quieter, kind of providing a little bit more of a peaceful experience?
Well, you said it right there. So I think it's important to have the shampoo sinks in a more low traffic area. That's a spot where guests want to be able to relax. We want our guests to be able to relax in that area when they're getting their shampoo, scalp massage. That's an experience where it's their chance to just be at peace. And I think it's important to not be in a really high traffic area.
Yeah, I think it's really important to say, we mentioned this about our experience center being 600 square feet. We mentioned about the shampoo area being a little bit more secluded. There's really no right or wrong answer. It's what's within your means and what you can do within your
Absolutely.
salon. Your experience center or your retail store might be 100 square feet. And as long as you're just creating a space for your guests to be able to interact with your product and feel welcome within, then I think you're accomplishing it. Again, shampoo area, I think we were very fortunate being a brand new space that we were able to locate them where we wanted to, but that might not be possible for you to do within your salon. If your plumbing is already existing in a space where it needs to stay, how can you create a space that feels a little bit more secluded? What can you add to it that makes it feel a little bit more
Absolutely.
special? I definitely would not recommend taking on something that is out of your means to simply create a space, but just look at what you already have and look at what your opportunities are to create that space for your guests, whether it's your front, whether it's the back, whether it's styling stations, creating a space that makes that one is a true reflection of who you are in a brand, and two, makes them feel very welcoming. One last thing I want to talk about in you know locations. I think that something that we briefly touched on was the cost per square foot. And in newer locations, definitely in A and B locations, you're going to be definitely looking at a much higher cost per square foot than you would be in a C location, as our schools, and drastic difference in lease rates. There's a benchmark that's floated around for a long time. 6% of your total sales would be the expense for your rent. That's a pretty difficult number to achieve in today's market in these type of A and B locations. Not unattainable for sure, but it takes time to build your business to get to that. Starting, it was very difficult. I think when we started, we were like at 20%.
Yes.
Our rent was 20%, and it's still quite high. We're still over 10%. But I think that there's value if the location is drawing attention, if it draws traffic. There's great value in that, because then maybe you're not spending as much as you are on marketing dollars. Maybe there's better opportunity to generate revenue and get your name out there, and position your business in a place where people can see it. So, looking at the location is really important. I also think the amount of square footage that you take on is really important to consider. This is something when we actually were looking for spaces that I didn't necessarily have a grasp on, and I think we're very fortunate it worked out for us. But you to be in a really high performing and putting yourself in a great position to make a great bottom line, your salon should be performing around $1,000 per square foot. So if you have a 2,000 square foot salon, that's $2 million a year is where you'd want it to be generating revenue. Your bottom line, your net income, can look really good when you're generating that. If you're looking at your space right now and you're sitting below $1,000 per square foot, just take a look at the opportunities and see how can you utilize the space to make it generate more revenue for yourself. Can you add more chairs? Can you bring in more retail to sell? Can you add more luxury services as add-ons that will, increase average tickets? Those will definitely all help you get to where you need to be. But really important, you have to be able to be in a space where you can generate enough revenue to compensate all the expenses you're going to have. And rent is definitely a really big one.
And it's got to be a balance too, right? So, yes, can you add more chairs, but you also want to make sure that you're still allowing the experience and not making things, too
Yeah,
crowded,
and if
right?
you can't add more chairs, can you extend your hours? Can you
There you
change
go.
your hours so you have two shifts rolling through every day? I think there's a lot of options. You should never find yourself in a position where you're just stuck. I think that if you look hard enough, you can find the opportunity that lies there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just changing one number. Sometimes it's just changing your average ticket. Sometimes it's just changing your, percentage of color. Sometimes it's just changing your percentage of retail.
Your wastage.
Your wastage, exactly. Sometimes it's just focusing on one thing and improving that one thing to begin with. That can really make that difference on your final income and on your bottom line.
For sure.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you share this episode with your team and subscribe to become part of the Hairblazer community. Get out there and blaze the trail to a thriving business for years to come.